It's been described as the biggest security threat in a generation. Thousands of European jihadists radicalised and recruited to fight in Syria and Iraq. Europe insists it's woken up to the threat. But is its strategy unified? Welcome to On the Front Line.
I had some contacts that I talked to, and I took a plane to Turkey and find those contacts, and then go to the border cross line between Turkey and Syria, and jumped over the fence, and suddenly I was in Syria.
What should Europe do to stop more of its citizens joining militant groups, including ISIL, in Syria and Iraq? And what strategy is in place if and when they decide to come back home? With me to discuss this is Jean-Charles Brisard, a terrorism expert, Marc Pierini, a former EU ambassador to Turkey and Syria, and also Hanif Kadir, a former jihadist who went to Afghanistan in 2002 to join the Taliban. The director of Active Change Foundation, he now works to prevent violent extremism. He joins us from London. Gentlemen, many thanks for joining us on the front line. I'd like to start with you, Jean-Charles Brisard. Is this threat presumed or is it real?
I think it's a real threat. I mean, we've never faced a threat of that scale in the past in Europe. Around more than 3,300 European citizens or residents have traveled since 2012 in Syria and Iraq. So this is a common threat, and we need to face it with a common security policy.
Well, Marc Pierini, if it's a real threat, why has Europe been so slow to react to this?
Well, I think it's a real threat in terms of homeland security, despite all this rumbling about military operations right now. Measures have been discussed since last year in the counterterrorism spheres of the EU, but the real movement has started this spring.
Hanif, you went to Afghanistan in 2002. This phenomenon of foreign fighters isn't new. Is this different somehow?
Look, I think if we look at the Afghan situation, we had a lot of people going from all over the world. The same in the Balkan War, in Bosnia, when we had the issue going on there. We had lots of foreign fighters going in there. Syria, however, is a total different ballgame now. We've had young people, young men and women wanting to go and join to alleviate the suffering of the innocent Syrians. Now, however, a lot of young men and women believe that, al-Baghdadi is the new Khalifa, and they believe he's the holy one, the one that's been, selected to lead the Muslims in this jihad, this global jihad on evil.
One EU country which has seen a significant number of its citizens leave for Syria is Denmark. We've been there and spoken to one returnee jihadist who said he was aligned with a faction of the Free Syrian Army.
I was in Syria twice. First time I was there 2 months, and the reason I went to Syria was seeing the injustice that's being done with the Syrian people from the oppressor, Assad, and seeing the whole world looking at it without doing anything. At that time, I just have my news from the video clips you saw on Facebook or on YouTube. So that was my news, that was my, how can you say, my source. And it was very romantic to see those videos and the videos with the fighters together, singing and going to fight together for fighting evil. And I was inspired. It was easy. It was easy. It was not. It took me 1 day. There was no security or nobody's asking questions. I took a plane to Istanbul, and from Istanbul I took a bus to the border.
Still in his early 20s, Abdul, who has asked us not to use his real name, came back to Denmark at the end of last year, having spent a total of 3 months in Syria. The first time he returned home from the war-torn country in 2012, he claims he was not stopped. It was only when returning from Syria a second time that the Danish authorities started asking questions.
My experience in Syria was not making me more radicalized or more how can you say, a threat to the European society. I believe that my trip to Syria, where I saw the conflict in Syria, made me less radicalized than I was before I went there. I was in Syria. I was called the Danish guy. So even in Syria, that my home country, I wasn't Syrian. I was Danish. So it wasn't my home, Syria. That time I think Denmark is my home. I'm Danish.
The voice there of one returnee jihadist, Jean-Charles Brisard. What should European governments be doing about people like him? Removing passports, making them stateless?
Well, most of the European governments are trying to prevent that phenomenon, meaning we believe it's too late once those people have traveled in foreign combat zones.
But what do you do about them? Because they are going to come back, aren't they?
They will of course come back. Most of them will come back in the state of mind described in your program, meaning people have fought there, but they won't come more radicalized. But some of them, a minority of them, we estimate about 1 out of 9 people coming back. That's from former jihads in Afghanistan and in Bosnia and elsewhere, will come back trying to commit terrorist offenses here on our soils.
So, Matt Pirini, what do we do about them? Do we prevent them from coming back to Europe?
The first thing to do is reinforce cooperation within the EU and with Turkey.
How do you do that?
Well, it's counter-terrorism cooperation. So it's a question of procedures, judicial procedure, police procedure, exchanging lists, and so on. The second line is what we do within Europe to reinforce the Schengen system, which until very recently, 3 months ago, couldn't do much when intercepting people. And the other issue is preventing young people to go, and the majority of the young people going to Syria are from poor neighborhoods, school dropouts, no job, and a vague, very vague religious indoctrination.
Okay. Hanif Kadir, most of the people going to Syria are school dropouts. They don't have any education. What would you say to that?
Look, people are going to Syria, young men and women who are very emotional, very sympathetic, and that can be from all walks of life. We've got young men and women who are educated in schools and colleges and universities going over there. The notion about school dropouts and not having a life in Europe, to an extent, I'd say to maybe 25-30%, I agree. With the rest of it, absolutely not. It's a mixture of people and individuals from all walks of life, to be quite frank.
Okay, and what do you say to that?
Well, I mean, quite clearly, the economic crisis in Europe and the fact that you have a growing xenophobia against Muslims also play a role. What is more dangerous than before in the ISIS narrative is that through their marketing, quote unquote, which they do extremely efficiently on internet with films and so on, they are offering a project for life. They're offering an adventure. That is the new thing.
I'd like to go back to Schengen, Jean-Charles Brisard. There's been a lot of talk by Europe, but not a lot of action in trying to create better information systems, better communication between member states. Why is that?
Member states are active. The problem is Europe today. For example, a simple example, the passenger name records deals with airlines and sharing of information to national governments. For months, for years, if not years.
But that was blocked in the European Parliament.
Yes, several governments have asked for the creation of a European PNR, so we can have access to all information from passengers entering the borders of Schengen. This is still not the case today.
But what's the point of a member state, an individual country like France, forming more draconian laws to prevent terrorism that affect our civil liberties when, for example, there is no information sharing?
What we're trying to do is to prevent the individuals who we believe are seeking to reach those countries, Syria and Iraq, to prevent them to go there, to stop them. Because we know from the past that a marginal proportion of these individuals will try to get involved in terrorism while back in their country.
It's a difficult issue, isn't it, Hanif Kadir? What do you do about that?
It is. It's a very difficult issue. I mean, look, First of all, if a young man or woman is gonna try to travel over to Syria or Iraq, you know, you can class them as already radicalised. Look, this young man that's come back, he's probably come back because what he's witnessed over there is not something that he went to sign up for. Now you've got radical groups like ISIS and Jabhat al-Nusra who are killing Muslims as well as non-Muslims over there. So when you've got young men and women who are going over there simply for humanitarian purposes and then coming back over here or want to come back, those are the ones that we need to be working with and, you know, getting their experience and their stories to come and express those stories in our community so young men and women can actually have a realization of what the facts are on the ground in Syria. My experience helps me, you know, all the time from coming back, you know, from Afghanistan.
Of course, everyone who's coming back, especially in our countries, it will be interrogated by the police. We'll try to understand their motivations.
Isn't that too soft?
Well, we cannot prosecute everyone. We're speaking about hundreds of people, and tomorrow maybe thousands of people. We cannot prosecute everyone. What we can do is put in place, this was said, de-radicalization processes with people testifying about what they saw, with people making counter statements to those wishing to go. All these processes are very important to put back those people into normal life. They've been experiencing a very violent situation. They need to come back to a normal life.
Okay.
So well, this is our
social
task.
Work in their communities, education, this will be very important in the long term.
Gentlemen, many thanks for joining us on the front line. That's it for this edition. We'll be back next month. Until then, you can find us on social media, YouTube, as well as euronews.com. From me and the On the Front Line team, thanks for watching.